Hey everybody. Uh I'm gonna post this vlog to my G Plus and my YouTube. Um Normally what I do with vlogs is I write them down and I write them on my G Plus and they tend to be more or less popular. Everyone's got different work schedules and online habits. So most of my posts, they don't exceed 5 pluses, and that's, you know, that's not really indicative of my 5,000 plus subscribers. That's just indicative of exposure. G plus isn't the best at going cross platform. But anyway, uh my blog posts, on the other hand, get on average 10 to 12, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but it's double, and it implies that people, you know, they tend to like my stories. So I start writing this one down, and I realize immediately it's way too fucking long, because it's basically three stories in one. So, bear with me, and buckle up, because this one's gonna take a few turns. Uh, I woke up about an hour ago, and I just got out of the shower, because when I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, and I mean from head to toe. I was completely drenched in sweat, and it was basically because I'd run a fever, and the vlog was supposed to be about the fever dream, and I'm gonna get to that. It's a bit of a doozy. Um, but the lead up to it is almost as important, if not maybe more important than the dream itself. So it starts yesterday. Now, just to recap, I'm a homeless veteran. I'm a DACA veteran, so I'm uh, I'm living in exile, marooned, and uh, I'm homeless, basically. I've got some patrons who have furnished me with a room, but if it wasn't for them, I'd literally be living on the street. So I don't have money for even stuff like bus fare, and barely enough money for food. So basically, I started running out of food like 2 days ago, and I was getting kind of weak and lightheaded. So yesterday I went downtown to buy food, and I don't have bus fares, so I only make that trip downtown twice a month, maximum like 3 times a month. And I went yesterday, but I was already lightheaded, and there's not a lot that I can afford in the way of like restaurants and stuff, their lunch menu or whatnot. And then I have this horrible celiac disease, which it's an inability to digest wheat, the protein found in wheat, called gluten. So I can't eat gluten, but it's not just like a basic allergy, it's a genetic allergy. Um, and I want to explain that real quick. Basically, my mother, she went on, she had one of these DNA tests done, which I don't recommend anybody do because the fine print in those companies' contracts basically say that they can sell off your data, your genetic data, to third parties, and they can make a killing. They can make a killing, and your information gets out there. It's like your phone number, or your SSN, your ID number. You don't put that on any form, you know, uh, on just any form. If you're doing your taxes or whatever, that's fine. But if you're signing up for like a fucking cell phone contract, or a free T-shirt at fucking Daytona Beach, you don't fucking sign any of that shit. You don't give away your personal information, because that's called data mining. They treat you like a hole in the ground, and they're gonna pull out your information and they're gonna sell it. So your genetic information, that can lead to all kinds of fuckery in the future. And so my mom, she's a noob, and she did that. But the bottom line is, she found out she's 50% Native American. And I think my father was more than 50%, because two things. One, he's a South American native, which, since North and South America were undiscovered continents, plural, and until the Panama Canal, it was basically one long, uninterrupted continent. So, but yeah, South America, it doesn't have any wheat. So it kind of makes sense that they shouldn't be able to digest it. Anyway, natives, or mestizos, half-blood natives, they tend to not be able to digest wheat, gluten, alcohol, or sugar. Because, the Americas were a good place. They had corn, they had beans, they had squash. These are things that were not found in Europe. So in Europe, to survive the long winters, they were conserving basically wheat. That was one of the only things they really had. And in the process, some of that wheat fermented, and they strained it, made it into juice, and they drank that, and they liked it, and that was alcohol. So they were big on sugars, they were big on wheat, and they were big on alcohol. And that it's what they had. It's what they had. It wasn't good or bad, but it's what they had, and they were used to it. But in the Americas, we didn't have that shit. We didn't need that shit. Our winters were by comparison mild, and we had lots of food and lots of protein, and we did not develop the blood enzymes to digest that shit. So it looks like my father was more than 50%, because he not only had it, but it went. He not only had celiac disease, but it went undiagnosed, and he died from it. You know, he had ulcers. Uh, his digestive problems went undiagnosed, so he kept eating the stuff that was making him sick. So those ulcers, they became cancerous tissues, and then they removed his stomach and he died. I have ulcers, but they are now healing after I self-diagnosed myself with celiac disease through a long process of elimination that took me over 2 years to isolate the ingredient that was making me sick. So I'm now recovering, but it took for fucking ever. Anyway, what's the point? The point is I can't eat gluten, and I can't eat sugar, or I shouldn't eat sugar. And what I should never, ever, 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 ever eat is high fructose corn syrup. So, this is now a PSA. This next segment is a PSA on high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is Satan's asshole. It's evil, evil, evil shit. Now, before I get started, I should point out that people are only now starting to get wise to the game. And there are activists out there who are lobbying state governments to get this shit made illegal. And it's starting to work, but because it's starting to work, to avoid the legislation passed against it, the producers of high fructose corn syrup keep changing its name. So, high fructose corn syrup goes under the following names. And if the law says high fructose corn syrup is illegal to be added in food, then they'll change its name to fructose. Not high fructose corn syrup. They'll change it to fructose. They'll change its name to corn syrup. They'll change its name to natural flavoring. Okay? Now, the trolls out there and the producers have been sued for doing this. They have literally, gone to countries like India, where there are all these call centers for hire, and they've hired these companies to troll people online who badmouth them, who badmouth high fructose corn syrup, and it's an army. It's an army. You'll hear them. You'll hear them. You just say anything about it, and they'll appear. And not just India, China too. There's, call centers all over the planet. India is just an example. But anyway, they'll say, those trolls, those hired goon trolls will say, well, fructose is natural, and no, motherfucker, no. Fructose is actually the name of an ingredient found in fruit, and that is natural. But when the word or the name fructose appears on a fucking label, on an ingredients list, you're no longer talking about that same fructose. Fructose used on the list is Monsanto hiding high fructose corn syrup. That's them avoiding the laws against it by calling it fructose, which it is not. Okay? And that's who we're talking about. We're talking about Monsanto. The same people who produce Roundup weed killer, which is, I don't give a fuck what the trolls say, it's watered down Agent Orange, because they produced Agent Orange. Monsanto produced Agent Orange during Vietnam. They watered it down and it became Roundup weed killer. Monsanto are the ones who produce GMO, which they're actually working on, and if I'm not mistaken, they've actually succeeded in okay, when you do gene splicing, normally you take the gene from one thing and you splice it into the genes of another thing to make a new thing. Not them. Because genes are basically, okay, like DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid is DNA. It's an acid, okay? These are amino chains of acids and bases. They're chemicals. So what Monsanto is basically figured out is, instead of taking genes and splicing them into other genes, they're taking chemicals and splicing them into genes. And they're taking pesticides and splicing it on the genetic level into genes, basically turning the plant itself into a pesticide. Alright? And when you're doing that shit with Roundup weed killer, which is basically watered down Agent Orange, you get food which sweats Agent Orange. Come at me, trolls. Come at me. I don't give a fuck. You don't have a degree in fucking molecular science and you're being paid to fucking back a chemical weapons producer. You can eat shit and die. Anyway, so why am I harping on Monsanto? Because, well, because they deserve it. They deserve all my hate and bile, and yours too. But because, in this case specifically, because they produce high fructose corn syrup. And high fructose corn syrup is so fucking concentrated that basically when it gets into your body, it turns into ethanol. And ethanol is gasoline, right? So eating food laced with high fructose corn syrup is like drinking gasoline. And when you take somebody with a genetic predisposition to where they can't metabolize alcohol, let alone gasoline, they can't metabolize sugar or gluten, let alone gasoline made from sugar or gluten or corn or anything, high fructose corn syrup becomes death. It becomes the worst, most vile poison that could, in essence, result in genocide of native peoples and those descended from native peoples. Now, if you want to get into conspiracy theories, just quickly ask yourself if a chemical weapons producer who was willing to burn people alive during wartime with stuff like napalm and deny Vietnam veterans benefits based on the cancer that they gave them by dropping Agent Orange on them. If they're willing to do that to the enemy and do that to our own troops Ask yourself if they're willing to poison your food, and if they're willing to specifically target a genetic subgroup through that poison. You know, am I saying that they're intentionally doing this? I'll leave that up to you. But this much is sure. Uh, Monsanto still produces chemical weapons. Now, chemical weapons have been prohibited for use during war. It's a war crime to use them. So, why keep producing them? Well, I think the answer then becomes obvious. It becomes obvious that the US government wants to keep it as an option. They want to have the option of committing war crimes should they deem it necessary. And how far are they willing to go with this? Let me put it this way. Monsanto, because they basically produce chemical weapons which cannot be used legally, and chemical weapons that have even less use during peacetime, Monsanto would have and should have gone broke and bankrupt long ago. But the US government wants to keep them alive. They want to have those chemical weapons as an option. So they're pushing hard to keep Monsanto alive, and they do it through stuff like government subsidies. Monsanto, they get free money from the government. And the government has used NAFTA. They've threatened countries. There are South American countries that have said, we don't want Monsanto. The shit's poison. We don't want it in our borders. And the US government has gone to those countries and said, we will sue you for violating NAFTA if you don't accept Monsanto. You will accept Monsanto or we will bring the hammer down on you. So the US government doesn't just give Monsanto free money. They actually threaten, intimidate, and bully other countries into accepting Monsanto. That's how much the US government loves Monsanto, and it's basically because they produce chemical weapons. So to keep the price of that subsidy down and to keep Monsanto operating and in business during peacetime, Monsanto has turned to producing food, and that's why they're poisoning our food now. Now, they do this through GMO, but they also do this through high fructose corn syrup. Now, why am I harping on high fructose corn syrup and Monsanto? Because it's in all fast food. When I went downtown and I was lightheaded, I needed to buy food. I don't normally buy any food outside because it's too expensive. But the junk food that's available, that is inexpensive, it's loaded down with high fructose corn syrup. It's loaded down with sugar. And I'm already sick. I don't need to get sicker, so I need to avoid that shit like the plague. But I was so weak that I decided that I had to buy some food. So I basically had two options, like candy bars and shit, which is more high fructose corn syrup than usual and more sugar than usual, or fucking fast food chain. Now, uh, two things about fast food chains. One, all of them, doesn't matter which, all of them slather their food in high fructose corn syrup because Monsanto has convinced the entire food industry that high fructose corn syrup is a preservative, right? So all the meat, all the bread, basically everything on all of those menus is loaded down with HFCS, except maybe the lettuce. It's like the only fucking thing on there that doesn't have HFCS. So because of the price, because of desperation, and because of lack of options, I went and bought two chicken sandwiches. Right. Now, two things. One, because I've got this inability to process gluten, the buns on this chicken sandwich, they're bad. You know, I can't digest that shit. The chicken is breaded. I can't digest that shit. And they're all slathered with HFCS. Can't digest it. But it does have trace amounts of chicken. So that's why I bought it. And as shitty as it sounds, it came with a slice of tomato and some lettuce, so I can eat that too. And it was for under $2, which was the cheapest thing available. So I bought the chicken sandwiches, and here's the thing. Um, Among the ingredients, the only one that makes me okay, like everything that is part of the sandwich, the HFCS, the gluten, the breaded meat, that's all gonna make me sick after I eat it. But there's only one part of it, the mayo, which is gonna coat my tongue and my throat as it goes down and make me yak immediately. You know, it's gonna make my sinuses go nuts. It's just gonna make me fucking wanna puke. Um, so when I ordered the chicken sandwiches, I did so with no mayo. Now this does two things. One, it keeps me from yakking, but also it forces them to make it fresh, because even though their own policies dictate that it's not supposed to sit under a heating lamp for more than 15 minutes, if it's been sitting in there for half an hour, they're not going to throw that away. They're going to sell it to you. So if you know, tweak it by telling them to leave something out, they have to make it fresh, because all the others will have mayo because they're made like that. So by telling them no mayo, they had to make it fresh. So they make it fresh, and where they can't leave it sitting for more than 15 minutes, they're supposed to leave it sitting for like 2 minutes, because they deep fry this shit. I mean, it's just like the fries. They deep fry it in boiling oil. So because it was now too fresh, when I bite into this chicken sandwich, boiling oil squirts out and it coats my tongue. Right? Now, here's the third story. Unbeknownst to basically anybody. Now, I'm going to gross you out a little bit, but I think it's kind of important. Um, I have this really bad infection in my mouth, and I go to doctors and I point it out, and they're like, "Oh, that's nothing. That's mucus, or you know, here have this fucking prescription for mouthwash." Just OTC bullshit. They never swab it. They never try to diagnose it. They just look at it and they're like, "Oh, that's this." I fucking hate doctors. Okay, they're doctors because they're licensed, because they graduated from like fucking medical school. It doesn't mean that they graduated with A's. You got fucking D student, fucking D minus F students who just barely scraped by, and you don't know that shit. They're sure as fuck not gonna advertise it. So you got a lot of incompetent fucks out there in white coats pretending to be fucking doctors, getting people sick, keeping people sick, getting people killed. Fucking hate those guys. They're completely incompetent. Then you got the motherfuckers who have sold out to the pharmaceutical companies. Now, uh, they're gonna be there are probably gonna be people down in the comment section saying my kid has ADHD and you shouldn't talk bad about ADHD because it's real and my kid has it. And I'm not saying that your kid doesn't. I'm saying that nor that ADHD doesn't exist. I'm saying that it's not as prevalent as the doctors say it is. Okay? I'm saying that the odds are more in favor of your kid not having ADHD and being misdiagnosed than of them actually having ADHD and being diagnosed correctly. The opioid crisis, that was caused by sellout doctors prescribing opioids when they weren't necessary. And ADHD, it's just like in the 60s. Before women's rights, before women's lib, women were upset that they weren't allowed to work. They weren't allowed. They were mistreated by their husbands. They were mistreated in society. They would get depressed. They were prescribed Valium like it was Pez, because according to the doctors, it'll put a smile on your face while you're doing housework. It's fucking sick. Those sellout fucking doctors are now prescribing ADHD medication just like they did with Valium, just like they did with opioids. And they're complete sellouts, and it's not about people being sick or helping people. It's about selling drugs, because they get payoffs from the drug companies to push and sell these drugs through their quote unquote diagnoses, right? So you either have a guy who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing because he never did. Then you got the guy who knows what the fuck he's doing and is choosing to do all the bad shit to push drugs. He's nothing more than a drug dealer. And then you got the motherfucker who, he may be competent, he may be incompetent, he may or may not push drugs, but you'll never know because he doesn't give a fuck at all. I mean, at all. He's like, I hate my job, I hate people, I hate everything about it. This is just a paycheck for me. My crime is neglect, which is a form of abuse, and I'm just gonna kill people through apathy. I'm here from 9 to 5. Don't talk to me, don't look at me, I don't want to see any patients. Right? So between those three types of doctors, fucking doctors suck. Fucking doctors suck. They all fucking suck. And when it comes to the infection in my mouth, it's just one of many of my ailments that has gone completely undiagnosed. So anyway, Me trying to do self-diagnosis. Let's see. Uh, Mucosal covering of the tongue, that could be autoimmune. You know, more mucus because my antibodies are going nuts because of autoimmune disease, which is a byproduct of allergies. Could be that. Could be like fucking basically like white blood cells going nuts. Um, it could be bacterial, which I doubt. It could be fungal, which I doubt, and I certainly fucking hope not. That would be a bitch to get rid of. Um, it could be yeast, which is gross, but there's a lot of different kinds of yeast, and I highly suspect, and I haven't studied this because it's not, it's kind of like triage. It's a priority, but it's not a high ranking priority with me right now. So I haven't studied it, but I'm thoroughly convinced, and there appear to actually be studies out there saying that companies that produce bread use way too much yeast. So just baker's yeast, right? Like that in massive quantities, or through many different providers committing the same sin. You can get that kind of yeast in your mouth, and then that there are so many fucking different there as many plants, different kinds of plants as there are on the planet. That's basically how many different kinds of yeast exist on the planet. So for one of them to infect your mouth, yeah, regrettably it's very possible. Could be yeast. So what's in my mouth? Is it fungal? Is it bacterial? Is it autoimmune? Is it yeast? What the fuck is it? I don't know. Doctors don't know. They never tested. They don't care. And the few medications that they prescribe me, they don't fucking work, because apparently it doesn't cure what the fuck I got. And the doctors, they don't give a shit. I don't have money to really pay them, so we're talking about free clinic. So whereas doctors can be incompetent, you get the worst of the worst there. Anyway, so I've got this really bad infection in my mouth, and I bought this chicken sandwich, and the sandwich was too fresh. It had boiling oil in it, and when I bite into it, that boiling oil coats my tongue as it washes down my throat. And whatever this is on my tongue, it got burnt off. It got burnt off, and nothing else affects it this way. Okay, so I'm like, this is great. I was very happy for it. But then last night I got a fever dream because of it. And basically, like, fever dreams, they're an indication of you getting better or you getting worse. Um, when when you start declining, you know, your body will run you a fever on purpose to try to kill off what's killing you, because it tries to burn it out of your system by raising your body temperature. And that will work with a virus, but it won't work with a fungus. It won't, I mean, not that I know of. And it sure as fuck won't work with the yeast. In fact, yeast likes heat. So yeah, when you start going into decline, your body will run a fever, and then it won't kill off what's killing you, so it'll run another fever, and then another fever, trying to kill it off. And if it doesn't work, you die. That's basically how that works. You just keep getting weaker and weaker until you're toast. Uh, on the other hand, when you start to recuperate, it'll run a fever, and then that'll be like the final blow. Your body is saying, its defenses are down, exploit the breach, and it'll rush in there and it'll set everything on fire, and then that should finish it. That should be the final blow. After that, you're in the clear, you start to recover. So, yesterday, because of lack of options and lack of money, I ate a chicken sandwich lathered in HFCS, which is gonna do damage to me in the near long run. But in the interim, it accidentally coated my tongue with boiling oil, and that boiling oil actually helped kill off a part of the infection on my tongue, and my body ran a fever to try to finish it off. It didn't work. I still have the infection on my tongue, but last night I ran a bad fever, and I woke up sweating. But the dream was fucking nuts, and that's what I was meaning to blog about. But when I started writing it out, I was like, this has no context, this has no pretext, and I need a prologue for this shit. I gotta tell them about the fucking burger, and then I gotta explain why the fuck that's bad. I can't leave the PSA out because Monsanto is, Satan incarnate. They gotta know not to eat fucking fast food. I gotta keep that shit in. So I started writing this out, and I was like, it's too long. I gotta make a fucking video. So here we are. And what I wanted to tell you about was the dream. Now, the dream, I had two dreams. One was the first one. I have a girlfriend, and I never have a girlfriend. I had a girlfriend, and I got her pregnant. And then I died. And I became a ghost that would follow her and try to protect her. And she was surrounded by these really shady, really evil people, and I would see what they would do behind her back, and I was desperately trying to manifest myself in the physical world through like knocking shit over or scribbling messages, just trying to fucking warn her about, who these people were or what they were doing. But I'm a ghost, so I'm physically exerting myself trying to create these energy, just to make myself solid enough to move physical objects, and it's not working, and it's this big fucking struggle. And then one of the guys around her turns out to be a pedophile, and I'm trying to write pedophile on his clothes to where people can see it, like sticking a note on somebody's back. I'm trying to write on his clothes to where he can't see it, but other people can see it, to warn them. And that was just shit from my day. We've been, on Twitter, on YouTube, and everywhere else. We've been fighting hard against Roy Moore in Alabama, and he's a pedophile, and dealing with an infection in my mouth. I don't talk to girls because I'm really conscious. It doesn't smell, the infection doesn't smell, but I'm always assuming that It's kind of like BO. You can't smell it. I can't smell it because it's in my mouth, but other people can smell it. So I'm always paranoid that when I talk to people, they can smell the infection in my mouth. So I don't talk to people. And then I definitely don't talk to girls because if we hit it off and she wants to become my girlfriend, I'll never be able to kiss her, because I don't want her to get this infection in my mouth. So uh, that when the boiling oil cleared some of the infection off my tongue, I guess I was so happy about it that I was thinking about it and it seeped into my dream. The fact that I want a girlfriend, that I don't have a girlfriend, and then the fact that the girl in my dream got pregnant. Uh, that's a nightmare for me because uh, you know, like in 2010, I got a vasectomy, uh, specifically to avoid that scenario because I couldn't, you know, fathom bringing a child into this world, and so this was definitely a nightmare. The fact that I had a girlfriend, the fact that she got pregnant, the fact that I died and became a ghost, and we're fighting off pedophiles and evil people. So it was just a really bad nightmare. And then, but that was all shit from my day. That was like a collage. It was a compilation of images and thoughts that I was having throughout my day. And that's a normal dream. Now, I should state that uh, I don't normally dream because since my infections and my illness, they cause a condition very similar to walking pneumonia. I've got these constant and chronic body pains and aches. And when you've got body pain and aches, they interrupt your sleep. So I basically like never enter REM sleep or deep enough sleep to dream, or at least not enough to remember my dreams. So this was a hell of a thing. The fact that I even dreamt at all. But then that it was a nightmare, that was a thing all by itself, let alone that you're a ghost and that you can affect your surroundings. It's just like a fucking allegory for my life. Uh, so yeah, um, just a quick recap. I am a Navy veteran, and I was never in Special Forces or anything like that, but uh, the Navy, I served on a pair of destroyers, so that's like a medium-sized ship. It's not as small as a frigate. Um, it's a medium-sized ship, but it's still a really tight community. I mean, it's really cramped quarters. So you meet people from all the different divisions, all kinds of different ratings and jobs, and I talked to MPs, and I talked to Navy SEALs, and I talked to Naval Intelligence, and they didn't tell me anything that was top secret, or if they did, I didn't know it, and I'm not about this to disclose anything, but I was certainly never a Navy SEAL, and that was what the second dream was. Um, the dream kind of segued. I went from being a ghost to being invited to a meeting. It was just a very basic meeting. It's like a PowerPoint presentation, and it was really funky because the meetings, it's gone in to about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and they kind of wrapping up, and they say, we've got these Navy SEALs and they're about to graduate, and normally that's a thing for family members to go to the graduation. It's for like family members or people in the chain of command and people on base or other SEALs. But I was like, I'll throw on my dress uniform and I'll go pay my respects. I don't know anybody there, and but I think it's important for me to go show a little moral support for these guys because of what they accomplished. And the next thing I know, I'm like, okay, so when does this meeting wrap up? And they don't really answer. They just kind of segue and they say, well, we need you to do this first. And now they're assigning me different tasks. And most of them, they're really stressful and they cause me to physically exert myself. And like in one of them, uh, they like stripped me down to my boxers, and I had to like run a marathon at night while avoiding detection. And I was like, it's just these really weird fucking hazing kind of routines and rituals. And then another one, for some fucked up reason, they got me planting like trees, and then while I'm planting them, they're fucking with the trees. And um, it wasn't so much that they were fucking with the trees or that I was planting the trees. It was that when they fucked with the trees, I was supposed to stand up uh, for the welfare of the trees and stand up for myself. Um, so yeah, it was kind of a mind fuck. It wasn't. It was never about the task. It was never about the task. The tasks were weird and nonsensical. It was always about my reactions. My reactions and my mental state and my willingness to do things. Now, this is all bullshit. You know, Bud's training, SEAL training, it's underwater demolition, so they teach you how to like weld underwater and swim really well, and they they make you do shit like push-ups and run on the beach and soak yourself in sub-zero water. It's that's what SEAL training is. Um, but this all of this was just like a fucking psych job. And once again, you know, part of it was my day seeping into my dream, in the sense that I'm guessing I was hearkening back to when it could be said I was I was useful, I was a functioning member of society, and I was a fighter, and the type of grit I had and the determination I had compared to this sickly, frail fucker that, you know, by comparison can't even beat a goddamn infection off, you know? My hearkening back to that was, or to my dreaming about military aspects was just that hearkening back to that willingness to fight, or that whole idea of mental exertion through the fever I was running, and the mental exhaustion of dealing with stuff like like feeling depressed or feeling down because of illness, and uh, yeah, it was just the really it's just the funkiest fucking dream. Uh, 1 second I'm a ghost, trying to warn people about fucking pedophiles, and the next thing I'm called into a meeting, a fucking PowerPoint presentation that, as it turns out, wasn't a presentation at all. It was indoctrination into Navy SEAL training. So I'm like, oh Jesus. So I fucking woke up and I'm soaked in sweat, and yeah, I was like, I gotta, you know, I gotta vlog about this dream, but in the process, I forgot some of the better details of what the training was about, um, in my dream, or what I was doing as a ghost. But yeah, the whole lead up to it, man. I I got a PSA against Monsanto in there, and if you're if you have like nurses training, or Patch Adams, if you're out there listening, man, if anybody knows what this infection on my tongue could be, because the fact that it responded so immediately and so positively by just dying, the fact that it responded so in such a pronounced fashion to burning or boiling oil, I think that's a clue. You know, it doesn't it doesn't like heat. Um, so yeah, I've got this infection in my mouth. If you're out there and you have medical training and you have, you know, an inkling as to what it could be, drop a comment down below. Drop a comment on my YouTube. Now you got these little YouTube quasi stars running around there, and they've got the same spiel, hit like, subscribe, and comment below. But I'm a homeless veteran. I'm a DACA veteran. I'm living in exile. I'm marooned. Uh, so it's doubly important you do that shit for me. That way, hopefully I can build this channel, and YouTube can send some money my way, and I can use it to pay for shit like lab work, doctor's visits, food that isn't loaded down with HFCS, and so that I can produce better videos, more entertaining videos, more often. So hit subscribe, hit like, comment below. Uh, if you thought the dream was weird, what you think about it. If you're a doctor, let me know what you think this shit on my tongue is. If you hate Monsanto and you don't mind the PSA I did, please let me know. Let me know some of the other fuckery that they do that I'm not even aware of yet. Comment below. I want to hear from you. Now, ideally, I would constantly produce videos, but I don't like to produce stuff that sucks, so it's taking me forever to get started. And because I'm sick, I'm actually a lot sicker than just an infection in my mouth. Because I'm sick, run low on energy. So, just staying awake and typing and stuff, that's a bit of a workout for me. When I went downtown, I was sweating just from physical exertion. And then uh, when I ran a fever, the exertion was so much that I dreamt about going through Navy SEAL training, because that's what my body associates with physical exertion. So yeah, uh, I I'm gonna try to produce more videos between here and Christmas. But if I don't, then I want to take the opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy woof. Sorry about that. A very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year. See what happened there? I was so focused on properly pronouncing prosperous that I got ahead of myself and failed to pronounce happy because I was focused on prosperous. So, happierus. Happierus. I think that's what I was trying to say when I fucked that up. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hit subscribe, hit like, comment below, or just one of the three. But do one of those three. And thanks for listening to my vlog. Help me grow this channel. And I'll try to produce more often and better stuff. Alright guys, I'm gonna leave it there. See you next time.